It can be so easy to get lost in the autopilot, doing all the things that you think you should do that will eventually one day make you feel happy. But yet, you can get stuck in that cycle and never truly ever feel fulfilled. And that is why I'm so honored to have Suzanna Kennedy on the podcast today. Suzanna shares such insight into her own soul's journey, where she had an awakening that made her realize that she had a purpose here. Suzanna Kennedy is a trailblazing Ascension Catalyst and 5D leadership coach with over 20 years of experience in spiritual development and leadership transformation. With a strong foundation in instructional and performance technology and years as a corporate trainer, Suzanna brings a unique blend of spiritual wisdom and practical expertise to her work. She is the creator of Reality Crafting 5.0 and author of Sacred Union, Ascending to a 5D Paradise. I truly enjoy this conversation with Suzanna, and it will make you think about life differently, about how to tap into yourself, connect with yourself, and realize that you have a deep-seated purpose here beyond all the things that you think you should be doing on a daily basis. It is a deep-seated soul purpose, and that is why I love this conversation. All right, welcome so much, Suzanna Kennedy, to the podcast. I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what drew me to you and what I wanted to ask you onto the podcast was just your story and just what I've learned about it, but I know you're going to share a lot more about that. But something that so many women can relate to is just feeling like you're going all the time, you're working, you're grinding, and then you're feeling very disconnected from yourself and wondering if there's more to life than this. And so I would love for you to share your story and your path from where you were to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, this was like 20 some years ago. So I was around 42, and I was a consultant. I worked for a consulting firm in the Detroit, Michigan area, and our clients were the auto companies. And I was doing very well, very highly respected. I was usually the only woman in the room. And our specialty was creating training and performance solutions. And I was designing training and then leading the development and training teams. But I was getting that nudge that a lot of women do around this age. I hear it's astrological. And I was questioning, is this really what I was put on earth to do? To, teach guys how to run a car dealership and sell cars, And it's like, I don't think that's what it is. And so I kept asking, what is my soul's purpose? And then one morning, a Saturday morning, I woke up with this energy running up my spine. It was electric, it was magnetic, it was intense, it was very scary. And I just kind of, said, oh my God, what's happening to me? And I heard a voice inside my head said, you are giving birth to yourself. Just breathe. So I had 2 children. So I did the birthing Lamaze breath. That was the only breath I knew about at the time. And that helped me to cope with it. But it continued for about an hour and a half. And when it was done, I felt like a completely different person. I felt this connection, this vastness of being, this incredible love, this incredible power. And I, realized that is who I really am. That's who we all really are. And yet at the same time, I could see this sort of network of looked like a computer network in my physical body. And I recognized it as my self-identity, my ego, my personality. And I knew just by looking at it that it was a false identity. And then I learned later that this is what we all create in the first 7 years of our life to we create a self-identity, and it's all based on what we observe from our environment,
Mhm.
and it's like our minds are AI, they're artificial intelligence learning from the environment and building an identity from that. And I knew that it was false, and I knew it was limiting. And I knew that if I didn't somehow get rid of it, I wasn't going to be able to be this vast being of love and light and connection. And so that was like my first mission, because it also came with feeling very mission oriented, like I do have a purpose and I'm going to find out what it is. But I knew it had something to do with expressing all of this love and light.
Mhm.
And so the voice stayed with me as a guide, and I followed it. And I was asking, how do I get rid of this computer program inside me? And I was led to a workshop. And so the method, the modality that this workshop leader had, it helped me to ground this energy, this new energy, into my physical body so that I could like fully integrate it and embody it. And then he also had a method for clearing the subconscious programming. And so I did that. It was very, very successful. And so I was so impressed, I certified in his modality.
Mhm.
And then I started doing it for others. Now, at this time in my life, I had just, my guides told me that my soul contract with my husband was complete.
Mhm.
And it was nudging me to move. And it took a year. I went through a relatively graceful divorce, because I was love and light, and I could go through it without getting triggered. And so that made the whole thing really very easy in relative terms.
Mhm.
And and so it took me about a year to gracefully move out of the old life and move into the new life. And I did get some good advice from a mentor, because when you go through that, or even anyone who just like has a peak experience
Mhm.
for a little while, it's just like you want to get on with it. You just want to leave everything and go do something else. But what I was guided to was do one thing at a time, one change, because all the changes that I could see I needed to make were big life changes, and the ones that are on the list of being the most stressful.
Wow.
And so I did, one at a time, and disconnected very gracefully, moved to Sedona, Arizona, which is when I started practicing this modality. And when I practiced it with people, that voice stayed with me, and they kept changing it up, do this, suggest that, gave me a vision for something else.
Mhm.
And what they were saying, my guidance team, was that there's going to come a time when so many people need this and want this, they're going to recognize that their own subconscious programming is what's limiting them, and they're going to want to clear it out. And you're not going to have time to do these one-on-one sessions. And we want you to recreate it, use your skills that I developed in the corporate world to reconfigure it so that it's more graceful. And so that people could either do it on their own, or I could do it for a big group at once.
Mhm.
And, or you could do it remotely, because at that point, the way I was doing it couldn't have been remote. And so I did that. And out of that, the emotional mental detox program was born.
Mhm.
And so it's been over 20 years that I've been offering this. And um, it's it's really like in 6 weeks, you can you can clear out that old programming and get into that connection and to your more authentic self. And part of it, the first 2 sessions has to do with really healing and maturing your inner male and your inner female so that they can come into balance and what I call sacred union, so that they're working together now, and also healing the inner child so that you have that trinity inside you that's healed and mature and working together as an inner family. And then what happens is, whatever you do on the inside then gets mirrored in your life. And so your relationships all start to improve, and your self-confidence improves, and your sense of what's a healthy boundary and how to respectfully and compassionately communicate those boundaries and then defend them if necessary. So it helps you to let go of all those things that you're doing because of the fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you stop abandoning yourself as well.
Yeah. And during I'd like to go back to that awakening moment, because did you have any inkling before that or any experience like that? Or was it just like out of the blue, you had this awakening?
Well, it was that kind of dramatic awakening was really out of the blue. I mean, I wasn't doing yoga, I wasn't meditating, but I had always been a bit intuitive, and I had always been interested in, what they would call metaphysical things. So, and then I think that's why I was able to integrate it so easily, is because I knew about things like, spirit guides, and I knew, about the soul, and I knew that we were more than what we were in this physical body, that there was more to us. I had that inkling, and I've talked to many people who've experienced it. It's what the Hindus call a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And they always warn you, don't ask for that, because it's very sudden, and it's like your whole emotional connection to who you thought you were is just wiped out from underneath you.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people, most people I've talked to did end up, with some mental health issues, or their family thought they had mental health issues. And, and you can, start to think you're crazy, or, in some religious things, like things are happening to you that shouldn't be happening. So I was very lucky in integrating it so gracefully. But now, a lot of the people who come to me is to help them to integrate that. But which I can do, and I do a lot, but what I like to do is take people through where they get the same result at the end, but they've gone through it in a graceful, step-by-step, very supported way, so that it doesn't end up being a healing crisis.
Yeah. And when, I know you talk about kind of that emotional upheaval of everything, like you leave the emotional side of yourself. Can you talk about, because I think often when you hear awakening, it's like, oh, life just changed, everything was great. Can you talk about the other side of it? Like, I know you said, you went through the divorce. Were there other things that were changing that felt maybe like a loss at that time, or felt like it was a lot to process? Because often when you rise up, some of the parts that and are familiar do not rise with you, and then there ends up being a separation from that. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that aspect of it?
Yeah, well, that does happen. Because you raise your frequency, and so it could be old friends,
Mhm.
you know, anything that doesn't match with you is going to change, to adjust. And so that's why it's important to go through it in a slower, more gradual way and get a lot of support for it. Yeah, for me, like the friends that I had no longer resonated, but they were all, these were couples that were friends through my husband. And so I always joke he got custody of the friends, but when I went to that workshop that I mentioned, I met new friends and they resonated with me. And I mean, they're still, this is 24 years later, and they're still my friends and still my support. So, things clear out, but it makes a way for the newer things to be attracted to you, whether it's relationships or opportunities or, even a new place to live. It all, so when you're in the void between this is let go and the other hasn't quite come in yet, that's the tricky part, and that's exactly when you need a lot of support. Because if you get scared and you try to hold on, the new isn't going to have a chance to come in. So when you're in the void, I always say just do what you love to do. Just spend the time finding out what your joy is. Do that, because that frequency of joy is opening your heart, and it's allowing that soul signal that was once distorted to get out more clearly, so it can attract the new opportunities and new people into your life.
Yeah, I love that. And just to be aware of that occurrence, I think is really important for someone going through that to be like, oh, this is part of the process. Like, this is not something going wrong, quote wrong, but just, it's all part of the process. And how important is self-trust in that moment, and trusting the process, trusting yourself, where you could easily get pulled back into what feels, quote, safe or familiar, and to actually allow yourself to let go. Can you talk about your self-trust and how much you had to maybe anchor into that?
Yeah, well, that's where intuition comes in. And that's where when you clear the subconscious programs and allow that inner male and inner female to work together, then the intuition that comes from the inner female, the inner male, which is your thinking, your logic, your decision making, all of that is trusting her, and then takes inspired action. So so then you're not either trying to get back the old stuff or doing too much busy stuff to try to get to the new. It's like you relax, because that inner feminine, when that's active, she's comfortable in the mystery. She knows what she feels. She may not know why she feels it. She may not know, she can't give the inner male like a rational decision why, no, that doesn't feel right. I'm not aligned with that. Well, why? What, evidence do you have? I don't. It'll be revealed. So she's comfortable in the mystery. And so that's where, that's what we have to get to, is to be comfortable in the mystery. But, what I do with my clients is help them to feel, is to not visualize so much, but feel from an emotional state how they want to feel, either in a new relationship or in a new place or in a new job, whatever it is. Feel that and be grateful for that. And then it's easier to let go of the how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Because that was a big key for me is I could sense this new life that I was going to have, but it was so different than the one I had. And how do I get from A to B? And I didn't know, I'm like trying to figure it out. And I couldn't figure it out. You can't, because the mind doesn't have access to future possibilities. The mind is a processor of information, and the database is the past. So it doesn't have any reference. So what I was guided to do, and what I guide my clients to do, is to keep, anchor that feeling of the outcome, how you want to feel. Anchor that in. And then that that's going to be the outcome. And then, and when you create that reality from your heart with your feelings, that reality is in your field. All the information that you need is in your field, but it's only revealed step by step. So what I decided to do finally that worked really well was to say, give me enough guidance and enough energy to do what I need to do today to stay aligned with this outcome. And then, check in every morning. What do I need to do today? And it would either give me a task to do, or it would say, you don't need to do anything today. We're taking care of it. Just relax, go take a bath. So that's how I got through it. And that's how I got through it gracefully.
Yeah. And I can see, I would imagine like in that moment, it can be really easy for someone who's like a high achiever, go-getter, to try to force things and try to be like, I need to do more, more, more. Like they may understand the concept, but then they try to force it. Can you talk about that versus like kind of surrendering to the process and like what you were just talking about, that trusting and your connection with your inner voice? Can you talk about that balance? Because it can be challenging for someone who's always been that like go, 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 push, productivity, force things, to transition into a place of like, okay, I have to sit back and just trust the process and surrender. That's a challenge. Can you talk about that? Because that was, you talked about your journey. You were that high achieving person. How did that look for you? Process of surrendering to the higher power.
Yeah. Well, it's relatively easy when you have cleared out your subconscious programming, because that's where you got the I have to do, and I'm never enough. And that came in your first 7 years when you were building your self-identity based on what was going on in your family. So you're probably modeling yourself, that programming is modeled after one or both of your parents. And so when you clear that out, you've let go of that pattern. And so it's not present anymore. And so it's not something that you have to fight anymore.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
it just becomes easier. A lot of these things that spiritual teachers tell us, like be mindful and the law of attraction and all of these things it's good advice. But when you've got that subconscious programming running, it puts up a lot of resistance, because that subconscious program has its own self-defense mechanism. It's like, it sees change as a virus that it has to that it has to overcome. And even if that change is good, it feels like its job is to keep you the same. And so it uses all kinds of strategies to do that. And so it makes changing for the better harder. But once you can understand that, and recognize what the ego's defense strategies are, then you can come into your heart, even if it's just for a moment, even if you know, your heart or your soul is saying, yes, this is probably what I need, you know, you make that decision. And once you make that decision that I'm going to allow, whatever it is, working with a coach or whatever it might be, you make that commitment from your heart. The mind has to then get busy figuring out how it's going to support you.
Mm-hmm.
So it shifts. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to have that courage to take the first step outside of your comfort zone. And once you do, you get all kinds of support from your heart and your soul, and the mental body surrenders more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and can we talk about more of that like subconscious clearing? Because I would love for you to dive into that a little bit more. What does that look like to clear the subconscious? Because often we're just living our life, we don't even realize what's going on behind the scenes. So can you talk about that a little bit more? How do we do that, and how we start that process of actually clearing the messages that we've been running on for most of our lives?
Yeah, well, you have to be able to um, get make that connection where your conscious mind and your subconscious mind can communicate with each other. And so, I mean, it's kind of like AM and FM radio. They're on two different bandwidths, and you can't get an FM station from AM, right? So you have to have a way to get into, and it's called the theta brainwave state, which is the brainwave state that you're in those first 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where it's like downloading all of this information without any filter. And that part of your brain also is good at pattern recognition. So when it sees things repeating, it says, oh, that must be important. It keeps happening. So that's, we build it from those patterns, like, oh, that must be who I am. So you just undo the process by getting into the theta brainwave state. And then, kind of, you need to know how that computer program works so that you can deprogram it. So that's what I put together in my emotional mental detox program is I get you into that state where not only is your conscious mind able to communicate with your subconscious, but also with your body and also with your higher self and the source of all that is. So I create this energetic hub where all parts of you are communicating with each other. And then we give some commands, like programming commands, right, to the subconscious to let go of this. And we're not only letting go of the programs and patterns, because that's in the mental body. We also have to heal the emotional pain that is attached to those beliefs. So you have a belief about yourself, and that is created. It creates events in your life, and these events may be painful. And so those painful emotions, whether it's fear or it's anger, mostly it's some kind of fear, usually, gets attached to that belief. And it validates, it seems to validate the belief. Well, it validates the belief because the belief created it, but it still isn't the truth of who you are, which is a vast being of love and light.
Mm-hmm.
So you also need to, at the same time that you're clearing the subconscious programming, you are also healing and neutralizing the emotions of all of the events that have happened because of that belief. And that's why, you see repeating patterns in your life, and, you have repeating relationship patterns and repeating patterns around your performance and those kind of things. And so in order to stop the pattern, you've got to clear it at the source, which is in the subconscious.
Absolutely. And getting to the root of it is always the key of all those things. So I'm 100% a believer in that myself. I've seen it in my life. And do you mind just sharing like a story of like someone you've worked with who maybe had a lot of those limiting beliefs? Their life was on repeat and these patterns that they didn't want, and then they experience life very differently now after going through the process.
Yeah, well, I have one of my clients, she was a very successful yoga teacher. Okay, so she had all of her classes filled to the max, but there's only enough money that you can make when you're trading your time for money, right? And so she had maxed out. And she was also feeling like, I think I'm meant for more. Anyway, the other thing is that she just had all these series of toxic relationships. Pretty much all of her relationships were toxic in one way or another. So she went through my program and she started to right away heal the relationship she had with her daughter, and who was, a teen at the time and really acting out. She was a single mom, So anyway, she went through and I coached her through different things. And now she has a great relationship with people in her life. And her biggest thing was that she wanted to attract her partner, and I call it a sacred union partner. So that's a partner that's at the soul level. And she had all these, toxic relationships with men. Anyway, she has been married for a few years now to this most wonderful man that is also, she's a strong, powerful woman, and he's a strong, powerful man. And he loves her and supports her and adores her and, can't do enough, but from a very strong masculine way, not as a, little puppy dog, not like that. So it's really beautiful. And now, because she has all of his support, she is able then to go and she's written a book. She's the founder of Star Peace Foundation, and she's working on it's called Star Peace because it's the opposite of Star Wars. So it's bringing more peace and harmony into the world. So she's a rock star.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's just, I think you said it earlier, it's like that, how your outside world mirrors your inside world. And, we all get stuck in this thinking we have to control everything outside ourselves and thinking that, if I can just do this one more thing, then my life will change. And even if that thing occurs, it's still the inner turmoil that you're dealing with. So it all starts with us. And I think we can't be reminded of that enough, that we have the power within ourselves to change our external world by changing our internal world. And for someone who's listening and is like, yep, I want to change my life, how can they connect with you?
My website is SuzannaKennedy.com. My email is Suzanna@SuzannaKennedy.com. So I would say go to my homepage and look at what I'm offering. Book a call. I offer complimentary calls to see, where you're at, what you need. If there's a way I can help you, we can feel into if we're the right fit for each other.
Very good. I'll put everything in the show notes too. So if you're listening, definitely check out everything there. And again, thank you so much for everything you shared today, all the value you've provided. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And again, for everyone listening, please, if you found value in this, share this episode, subscribe, and just, leave comments. Let me know what you thought about this, what your take-home points were. And again, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.